Good afternoon, guys. My name's Jake Hicks. How are you all doing? Thank you for stopping by on the PiXAPRO stage here. Some of you may know me for my sort of brightly colored work, and that using gels and colored lights, and that's what I'm going to be doing here today. I'm going to be adding some colored lights into what I would consider like a classic editorial style setup. As you can see on the, I've just given you just a rough sort of example of the sort of thing I'm going to be going for today. And I would consider this fairly basic. You know, it's 3 lights, but they're quite separated. It's quite clear as to what they're doing. And like I said, this is like a classic editorial style setup, and we're just adding a little bit of a creative twist to it via some colored fill coming in here. And you know, what is it like? You know, classic editorial. What does that really mean? Well, this sort of style of shot is very popular at the moment. Years ago, it was quite popular. Those of you that are old enough, like me, to remember those school portraits with that dodgy, cloudy background, just a bit sketchy all those years ago in the 80s. Well, you know, that sort of thing is that these sort of more modernized backdrops are starting to come back in fashion now. And you sort of like the New York fashion, you know, shots, the editorial shots. They're loving these hand-painted backdrops. So PiXAPRO do these. This is one of theirs. This is probably my favorite one. I've got this one myself at home. This is the one I use the most, mainly because it's quite a neutral color, but they do, you know, sort of reds and greens and yellows and that sort of thing, or shiny ones as well. And I know Tommy Reynolds, who's going to be shooting here later on, he's going to be using sort of more of an organic brown one as well, which works nicely. But these hand-painted backdrops, really nice for this sort of thing, and you can really use them for anything, like even, you know, maternity shots, baby shots, even family pictures, but also like they work really well with fashion, okay? And that's what we're going to be looking at here today. So our model today is the beautiful Jocelyn. It's also my wife, so I'm sure this will be fine. Can't foresee any issues. So yeah, so what we're going to do, I'm going to talk you through this one light at a time when I'm setting this up. And don't be, oh, that's nice of Jake. He's going to show us, you know, each light, what each light is doing. This is how I would set it up if I'm doing it myself. Wherever I am, I'm always going to build my setup one light at a time. Every light in a setup has its job, and I need to make sure that it's doing its job before I move on to the next one, okay? And for me, lighting is sort of broken down into objective lighting and subjective lighting. Okay, so for a lot of the time, I'm going to start off with maybe my objective light, which is going to be my key light, right? And when I say objective, like there's really one sort of purpose and job that has, and that's to expose my subject, right? That has to be pretty much spot on. It can't really be too overexposed or too underexposed. It has to be pretty much spot on because its sole job is to correctly expose the model. So that's my objective light. And the other lights tend to be fairly subjective. Like you can have a fill light, or how much power does that need? You can have a lot of fill, you can have a little bit of fill. Subjective, right? Same with a hair light, a lot of hair light, just a little bit of a hair light, very subjective. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're setting up your shot. You know, maybe start off with your one objective light, and then everything else is going to complement that as you build around it. Okay? So, starting off with my key light then. As you can see, we're going to come in here, and this is probably going to be my key light here, and what I'm going to be using as a modifier for that is a beauty dish. And beauty dish is arguably one of my favorite modifiers of all time. It's probably up there, like definitely top 3 of my most used modifiers. And let me just talk you through this. If some of you haven't used it or haven't seen it or not sure what it does, let me just go through what are some of the options, like variations of it. This is the size that I would recommend you go for. So this is like around about a 22-inch one. That's the one that I use. And this has got a grid. You just seen me taking off the diffusion cover there. This is the grid. And then inside is where we have a little bit of variation. Because this one, I think, is a white beauty dish. And they also come in silver as well. So what's the difference? Well, the white one is probably going to be the most versatile. Yeah, so if I was going to be photographed with a beauty dish, I'd want it to be a white one. Yeah, it's a little bit forgiving. The color is a bit more neutral. The silver one is going to give us a bit more of a contrasty light. So whenever we add contrast to an image, especially a color image, is going to increase the saturation. Yeah, so contrast and saturation are inherently linked. So whenever you use a modifier that's going to increase the contrast, it's always going to increase the saturation of the colors as well. So silver is great for fashion. Editorial, those sorts of things where you sort of want to pump up the clothing. It's going to show a little bit more texture on clothing as well. Good for hair shoots where you want to see some more texture in the hair. So the silver is definitely going to be the one there. The white one, like I said, good for regular people like me. Corporate headshots, they can work as well, more flattering. Family shots, that sort of thing. Definitely the white one is going to be more versatile in terms of that. So if you can only get one, I'm fortunate to have both, but if you only have one, I'd probably go for the white. So why is the beauty dish so good? Like, why is it, why do I like it so much? Why is it so popular? Why is it even a thing? After all, you could go, well, Jake, I've got a 90 centimeter Octa, I put it in there doing the same thing, right? So the biggest thing about a beauty dish is this diffusion cone here in the middle. And what this is doing is the light is coming in here, it's hitting that cone, and then it's bouncing out around this dish. And it's that light that comes from that is that makes this so popular and such a beautiful light. So for example, you could take this home and maybe fire this at a white wall and take a light meter reading across the wall, and it would be a very even exposure across a fairly decent area. You do not get that with a softbox, especially when we're using our modifiers in quite close like this. A softbox, especially a smaller one, is going to have a very pronounced hotspot when brought in quite close. And by hotspot, I mean it's going to be brighter in the center, feathers off to slightly darker towards the outside. And this is what we don't want, especially for beauty. We definitely want it to be more of an even light. And this, because of this cone, eliminates that hotspot and gives you this beautiful, beautiful light. Now, there are a few caveats to that. One of them being the distance that this is used to your subject. So let's assume we're photographing a person. So the biggest thing that we want to make sure that we're doing when we're using this, like if we're using it back here, it's not a beauty dish anymore, really. It's just a fairly hard light quite far away. If we want to be using this beauty dish to its fullest potential, it really needs to be in really nice and close. And for me, a good gauge is arm's reach away from the model, right? So like arm's distance away. And we're always going to have it up a little bit higher than the model's eye line, just so it's more flattering on the skin, okay? So, really that's one of the only caveats with it. You just got to make sure that, in my opinion, you want to use it in nice and close. This is why you need one of this size. They do make smaller ones, right? In my opinion, try and avoid those. If you can't afford the bigger one, just try and wait a little bit longer and save up for the larger one, because the smaller one, I found that because of this diffusion cone, sometimes you can bring it in close, and sometimes you have it's darker in the middle and you have brighter ears than nose. It's not a good look. Okay, so try and save up and get one that's this size, and that's, like I said, that's the one that I use all the time. Okay, so that's our beauty dish, and we can add a grid to it. And like I said, we've also got the diffusion sock as well. So let's put this on. Let's see what this is doing. Okay, so like I said, we want to be bringing this in. And later on in the shoot, I know that I'm going to be adding a colored gel. So I am actually going to put this off to one side as opposed to coming straight on. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll explain as we go, but I'm going to bring this off to one side. Okay, so again, it's in fairly close. Let's start taking a shot here. Let's see what we've got going on. Okay, so let's turn this on. Now your settings, and mileage may vary as to what you want to achieve with your portraits. One of the biggest things for me is to try and eliminate a lot of the ambient light. So in an environment like this is a very bright room, let's be honest. Okay, we got huge skylights up there. We got like pinpoints of very bright light. So if you're not sure, I mean, in an enclosed studio, I never have to worry about it because the studio is always dark anyway. So if you're ever worried about it, what we can do is let's just turn off the flash and take a picture, and let's see how much ambient light that we've got. Ordinarily, I would shoot at 125th of a second. ISO 100. And about f2.8 for a portrait, something like that. Just have a little bit of a shallow depth of field. So remember, the flashes are not firing. So let's see what we get. So from experience, I know that this room is a lot of light there, yeah? Now, there's a couple of things that we can do. One of them is turn the lights off. That's not going to happen. The other thing that we could do is we could increase the shutter speed, but we've got to be careful that if we increase the shutter speed too fast, so it's too much, so we're going to start to see the shutter coming across when we fire the flash. So I'm really kind of limited at around 125th. I think I could get away with 250th. It's just a quick sidebar. Some of you, like Canon, for example, they'll shoot up to 250th of a second, and for the most part, you'll get away with that. Some of you may have one of the 50 mil Canon lens. It's like 1.4 or 2, whatever it is. Beautiful lens, massive lens front, right? And you've been shooting for years at 250th of a second. You'll put that 50 mil, 1.2 on, or whatever it is. You take a shot, and that lens is now so big, the aperture on it is so big that you're now starting to see the shutter coming in. So for me, I just go, look, 125th is safe for everything. I don't need to think about it. So that's, yeah, just bear it in mind. Okay, so we can't really change the shutter speed too much to reduce this, so we're going to have to increase the aperture. Let's go up to, 5.6. Let's take a shot. We really want to get rid of as much ambient as possible. So now we're looking at HD TV up there, so just bear that in mind. I'm just going to skew this around so that you guys have got a rough idea. Right, so you can see my laptop there. In reality, very, very dark. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That HD TV is just pumping it up. So the actual image is very, very dark. Okay, so now we've got this baseline room to work on. We can now start to add lights to that. Okay, so let's turn on our first light. Let's turn on this beauty dish here. And let's just take it down low. This is not going to be enough power, but let's just see what it's doing. Can always bring it up. So I've just given it just one more stop of power there. Okay, so we're kind of getting there now. We're kind of getting back to where we were. I'm going to keep checking my laptop rather than that HD TV, but you guys get the idea. There's one other thing that I've kind of done here instinctively that I haven't really spoken about, and that's the distance of my model to the background. For this shot, I'm not actually using a background light, yeah? So I'm actually relying on my other lights to actually include the background in the shot. So we have to think about where that seat is going to be, or where she's going to be. You can't have her too far forward because the background's just going to be black, and we're just going to lose all of that hand-painted detail. So, you know, thinking about it, if we separate the light to the background into thirds, she's like a third off the backdrop, and then the light is 2/3 away. And that means we're going to have quite a lot of light back there. Now, one other thing that I'm sort of cautious of is that I want to add a colored gel to this shot, right? Now, any of you who have heard any of my tutorials or workshops or anything like that before will know that one of the foundational rules of gel photography is you can only apply a gel to a shadow. Okay? You can only apply a gel to a shadow. So I can't just bring a light in here and then try and bring another gel in here and attempt to try and put color where that light already is. It's not going to work. I have to make sure that I've got shadow areas in my shot that I can start to bring in a colored gel. If there's not shadow areas there, like if I was to bring this light round, have a big softbox on it and start shooting it, there's all this light coming in there, I can't add any gels to that, okay? So I have to be mindful of trying to create shadows in my shot. So this is fine as is, you know, it's not too bad, but I'm thinking I actually want to have more shadows in my shot. What I might do is actually add a grid to this. And that's actually going to really pull, like really, you know, focus that light in. Okay. One common misconception with grids is that everybody thinks it makes the light harder. That's a lie. Internet myth. Yeah, grids do not make the lights harder. They just focus the quality of the light that you already have. So a grid on a softbox is not making that light any harder. It's just focusing it. This is not making this light any harder. It's just focusing it in. Okay? So I'm not going to change the power of this light. I just want to show you. I know that that grid is going to probably take at least a stop of power away. So I know this is going to be dark. But let's just shoot it and see what's going on. Did that fire? It did, yeah. Okay, so let's give it a bit more juice. Okay, this is cool, yeah. We can kind of make this work. Yeah, I'm just going to take a little bit of a wider shot, see what's going on. And I may even turn that beauty dish a little more in here to try and get a little bit more light on that background. Okay. Okay. Right, so we get a little bit there. I'm trying to think about the best possible way to get those shadows as well as a little bit of light on that backdrop. Maybe if I just bring it a little bit further this way and try and scoop it past. Let's see if we can do that. So you see now we've kind of lost that highlight down there behind her. So this is okay, but actually now that I've moved it a little bit further away, I think I need to bring it up a little bit just to make sure that light is coming down nicely. I have moved that a little bit higher. I'm just going to give it a couple of tenths of stop just to give it a little bit of power. Okay. Nice. Okay, so we've got our pool of light there now. Now is probably a good time to talk about some of the lighting that I'm using, because you've seen me sort of modifying the lights here with the little trigger here, or adjusting the power of them. What I'm using here, these are the City 600 Pros. So that means there's a 600 watt head. Now, I work in a studio, but pretty much 90% of the time. So I have a lot of control of the light that's in there, but sometimes you are going to work on location where you're going to be turning up to a location. Maybe there's big windows in the location. You're not sort of like, can I black out those windows? Where's the sun going to be at 4 o'clock when we're doing this shoot in the living room? Those sorts of things, right? And the 600 watts, I mean, I use 500 watts a lot of the time as well. That's more than enough power for what you need most of the time. Even if you're trying to overpower daylight, this is actually more than enough power. I've got a couple of 1,000 watt strobes at home, and I haven't used those in years and years and years. It's just that they're just not needed, okay? If you need that extra power, then great. But just remember that when we're doubling the wattage of these, we're only getting one extra stop of power, okay? So if we go from a 600 to a 1,200 watt head, you're like, whew, double the power, and you pay a little bit extra for that for sure. But remember, that's one stop. Yeah, every time you double the power is one stop. So if it's like going from 600 to 1,200 is just like shooting at 100 ISO or 200 ISO. Yeah, so do you really need all that extra power? Most of the time you don't. 500 and 600 watt heads are going to be more than enough for most of your work, even if you're trying to overpower the sun. Okay. These Pro heads have extra features like TTL and high-speed sync, as well as a slightly brighter LED modeling bulb, which is really nice. But for the most part, like I say, these are the lights like this, and I've used lights like this for 15 years. Like they're going to do you, they're going to do you for most of the work that you're doing. Okay. Okay, so that's that. I might just put this sock on here as well, just to soften up that grid. Whenever you put anything in front of the light, you're always got to be mindful that you're going to lose some power. So can I do this without it pinging back at my face? That would be great. Nice. Okay, I'm just gonna triple check that. Okay. So, next we want to bring in our, I didn't fire, did it? Or did it? And it's just, that's just taken away so much power. Let's try that. I'm just going to push it way over. I just want to see if it's actually talking. Okay. I might have moved the dial. Okay, it is talking. Okay, cool. Right, let's bring that back. Take a little bit off that. Nearly there. Just watching for that exposure on the face. I don't want it to be too much, but still have a little bit of light falling around. Jake's gone the wrong way. I think that's right. So yeah, so from now, like I said, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that shadow, and now we want to fill that shadow with a color gel. Okay, so there's a couple of ways we can do that. I'm going to be using a big umbrella here. You could use, I mean, in that image I showed you earlier on, it was a big softbox, same sort of thing. I prefer umbrellas for a couple of reasons. Which I'll go through now. This is obviously a big white one, but they come in silver as well. I'm just going to pop it on here and then talk about it. Okay. That's not in the way at all, is it? Okay, so umbrellas then. So there's a couple of reasons why I like umbrellas. First and foremost, they're very easy to set up. Yeah, it's literally just 2 seconds, you're done. Secondly, very easy to transport. I'm already carrying light stands anyway, so I've already got like a bag of light stands. These just slot in that bag of light stands easy. The other thing as well, that they're more, like, they have more versatility than we think. So at the moment we can use it like this, but we could also use it like this, and immediately we've sort of reduced the size of our umbrella. So we've really brought that in to a smaller umbrella, and you can actually focus that in. On top of that as well, I've actually partially closed umbrellas. So long story short, somebody forgot a beauty dish on a shoot. So I actually used a small umbrella. Instead of a beauty dish here, slightly closed it, and it kind of did the same thing, right? So you actually partially close the umbrella, and you have a very, more of a focused light than you realize. So very, very versatile. The benefits of the silver one, I mainly use silver. The reason I use silver is, again, because of that contrast. And that contrast for my work, like I use a lot of color gels. More contrast means more saturation, stronger colors, right? So whenever you're using modifiers like that, silver modifiers, more contrast, more saturation. The other question I get some of the times is, where should this be in terms of, the position of it? If you come to the side of your umbrella and just look down the side, if you can see the bulb, then it's too far out. Yeah, so you want to make sure that you've brought this in close enough to the light that you cannot see the bulb from here. If you can see the bulb, you've got to bring it in. And if you can see the bulb, that means that light is spreading around the room, bouncing off the floor, the ceiling is going to be a mess. So just make sure that you brought it in close enough, okay? So, the other huge, huge benefit for umbrellas for me is how easy it is to actually gel them, right? Now, to be fair, softboxes aren't too tricky, but umbrellas are even easier. We just need to put them on our reflector, and as long as you're covering this dish, the whole umbrella is gelled. Okay. So some of you have gone, how has he attached that gel? So all I'm using here is I'm just using bulldog clips. I think I've got some extra on somewhere, but yeah, I'm just using bulldog clips here. I'm putting that over the light, and then I'm just using magnets to keep that gel on there. So as you can see, the gel is super flush to the light itself. That with tape, sometimes it's like hanging over and bulging out, but with magnets, very, very close to the light. Okay, so no spillage. And super quick. Okay, so let's see what group this is in. So that's C. So we want to make sure one tip as well when you're working with gels is to start with a light at a low power and slowly build up in power, especially with gels. I think sometimes a lot of us can be guilty of overexposing gels, and a light meter will do that for you as well. A light meter is dying to tell you that that you need more power going through a gel, but sometimes some of the richest color comes from those gels when we underexpose the light, sometimes underexposing by 1 or 2 stops. And if we start really bright and then work down, sometimes we can go, oh yeah, that looks good, and just leave it there. But for me, I would say it's better to start low and then slowly just add that color into it, okay? So we're just going to start low power. I might bring that in a bit closer, or not if that camera's right there. Let's see if we can make it work from there, otherwise that camera will see nothing at all. Let me just see if I can make it work. The reason I would bring that in is to just have more control of the light in your set. So you're bringing this in and turning it down gives you a lot more control of that light. I'm going to see if I can get away with it without ruining that view of that camera, but let's see. So I know that's going to be very low. I'm just going to bring it up stop by stop. Again, because it's quite far away, we might need to see. It's starting to creep in there now. Here we go. Nice, starting to fill in those shadows now. So let's just keep going. These shots are free on digital, so we can always go back. Let's just keep going and see what it looks like. So there's one extra stop. It's kind of okay, but I think it's starting to dominate the shot. And we start to see a shadow behind the model now as well. Let's just ease off a little bit on that. Let's bring that back. Okay. So now we're just filling in some of those shadows beautifully with that colored light. Okay. So there's one other thing here that Jocelyn has been modeling for a very long time, and she's working with me obviously for a long time as well, so she kind of knows what she's doing. No, she's very good, but the thing is that she knows where the key light is, and she's drawn to kind of looking towards that key light. So some newer models or some people who are maybe not as experienced are like, well, I don't know where I want to look, I just want to look straight to you. And that can ruin the shot. For something like this, we kind of want her looking like chin towards the light, really, because that's going to be the most beautiful light on the face, especially with colored gels as well. For example, if Jocelyn looks down here a second, I know this is obvious, but I just want to really drive the point home. Now she's looking towards the blue gel. She's just going to get a face full of gel, yeah, and it's just like we've lost the impact of that white light on the left. She's looking back up there. Okay, far better. Okay. One last thing as well is Jake spent most of the afternoon on the floor here. What's he doing? Like, you got to think about where you're going to take your shot from as well. It's fine if you just want to come in here like this, but that's a pretty basic way of approaching your image. What are we saying about the subject? You're just coming in here, just flat on, boom, boom, boom. You're not really saying very much, okay? We want to be like, what are we trying to say about our subject? Like, you would never come in for a corporate headshot and shoot them from above, for example, because that makes them look smaller in the shot. Like a CEO of a company, you want to come down low, you want to be looking up at them so that when the viewer is looking at that image, the subject of that image looks very powerful, okay? So sometimes, like glamour photography, like girls will be sat down, you'll be, shooting them from above. They look very diminutive. You're supposed to be, you're supposed to be the powerful viewer in the shot. Now, for me, fashion editorial, we always want to be. Sorry, that's what you're pointing at. Thank you. Yeah, so fashion editorial, we always want to be empowering the subject, right? So we want to get underneath them, we want to be looking up at them and empower the subject from below. So it's far better to do that than it is to come in here and do the same thing. Okay? So there's one final element to this that I just want to add, which is kind of kind of fun. And that's this light poking over the top here. And it's just got an open dish in it, nothing crazy, just an open reflector dish. Let's turn that on. And if you wanted to, you could, have that hanging over, angle it down, maybe use it as a hair light and on top of the shoulders and that sort of thing. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not the reason I've put it there. What I want to try and do is I want to try and get some flare into the lens to create some atmosphere into the shot. And one thing on that is, this is kind of a cheat way of doing it. Like, it's all very well, you're in a nice posh studio and they've got this beautiful like scissor stand, boom arm. They're going to bring that hair light over. Great. If you've got that, then by all means use it. But for many of us, maybe we're shooting on location or home studio, right? This is a cheat way of doing it. You can actually put your, pop your stand, your background up, bring it slightly forward, and then put a light behind the backdrop, and you don't need that boom arm for the hair light. Okay. So, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to try and create some flare into the shot, and I'm going to do that using a low contrast filter here. I don't know whether this will work. Let's have a look. So let's just take a shot without this a second. I just want to see the power of that light. 2 seconds. So we can barely see it having any effect at the top of the frame there. Barely any effect at all. Let's just see what this does with this on there now. So we're just creating a little bit of atmosphere into the shot. It's that sort of cinematic look that can be quite nice. And we can increase the power of that if we wanted to. I'm just like, we can always take it back. We can always take it back. Let's just give it one more stop of power. Let's see what that's doing. That's 2 stops. Let's try that. So you should see a dramatic. Okay, I think we can get away with that. I don't mind that, actually. It's kind of nice. Now, when we're creating flare like this or atmosphere, there's a couple of things that can play a role in it. One of them is going to be the mill of your lens, so how long your lens is. If you're wide angle on a lens, you're going to get a lot more flare into the lens. If you're on a 105mm prime lens, something like that, you're going to get a lot less flare. So think about the middle of the lens, and also some of you may have lens filters on, like lens protectors and that sort of thing. All those, if you have light coming into the lens, unless you really, really need that UV protection filter on there, please take it off. Yeah. Yeah. Look, you spent $2,000 on a lens. You're not. That is not going to save it if you drop it. But it will ruin some of your pictures. But yeah, so having any light coming into the lens and any flat piece of glass in front of it is going to create flare. Okay. So that's going to do that. This is a low contrast filter. Some of you from Lee Filters. Some of you, I think the most popular one is like a black pro mist or something like that. There's loads of other ones out there doing a similar sort of thing, and it's just scattering the light that enters the lens. Okay, most modern lenses now are so highly polished that you don't get any sort of flare at all. Go back 50 years, pick up a vintage lens, you're going to get tons of flare into the lens, but not anymore. And these will sort of bring some of that atmosphere back. And they use it on shows like period pieces, like The Crown, like pretty much use that. I know Peaky Blinders uses it as well, just to take the edge off some of the modern filmmaking that can be a bit aggressive. Okay, so love this filter. And we can add some color to that as well if we wanted to, which I might just do. I don't want to go too. You could use a blue again. Let's just try. I'm going to use a CTO gel, so a color temperature orange gel. I'm just going to use that up there. And this hopefully will be a nice contrast against the blue. So I promise I'm still here. The video guy is livid. I can see his face now. Again, I'm just going to use these magnets super quick. Okay. Good luck editing that. It's going to be great. Yeah. So at the moment we got this coming up. This is without the filter. I don't think not going to see it too much. Let's see if we might have to add a little bit more power. Anytime you add a gel to the lens, anytime you add a gel to a light, that's really nice. Anytime you add a gel to a light, you might need to up the power. I might do, but I don't mind that. Just to give it a little bit of a warmer glow. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, love that. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to ask anybody who wants to take some pictures. You know, I'll give you the trigger, I'll give you the settings. Come up here, grab some shots of my beautiful wife. No pressure. But any questions on that? If there are, let me know. Yes. Yeah, so the question was, what is this filter? This is a low contrast filter from Lee. I think they go in like quarter, half, 3/4, and 1. This is a full 1. But yeah, anything like the Black Pro Mist, all the other ones that I know have just gone from my brain. But yeah, anything that's going to be like a cinematic filter that is going to do the same thing. Okay. All good. Right. Okay. So before I get prodded with a stick, I'll let you go. I'll move on. But yeah, thank you for everybody that's come along today. I'm going to be hanging around the stand for a bit. If you've got any questions, by all means, ask away. Anything like that. I've been Jake Hicks. Thank you so much for joining me here today on the PiXAPRO stage. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, guys. A round of applause for Jocelyn, please. Thank you. Thank you.